Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we are having a look at a Greasus Goldtooth reveal thing, I guess. It's talking about Greasus Goldtooth. It's a new blog post. We're going to have a look at it. So, who is Trade Lord, Hordemaster, Tribe Stealer, Greasus Goldtooth, the shockingly obese? Well, who is he indeed? So let's find out. So, Ben Barrett, once again, thank you for the blog post. And many more titles besides. Today we're introducing you to one of our two Ogre Kingdom's legendary lords, the Over-Tyrant, greatest and fattest of them all. Or so he claims. Greasus Goldtooth. After eating his father and following it up with various tyrants, bruisers, and anyone else who stood to challenge him, Greasus is the up-and-coming leader of all the Ogre Kingdoms. While violence and butchery will get him plenty, part of his success is knowing that endless wealth and its appropriate use, be it bribes, blackmail, or simply having the better weapons and armor, is a valid path to victory. Declaring himself too rich to walk, he now wheels around, ever a leg of some beast or other in hand, ready to kill his enemies with a great diamond staff to the skull. All respect the Over-Tyrant's ability to combine fighting and eating, as well as his enormous girth and wealth. As usual, we took a moment to sit with Andy Hall and discuss our newest fattest friend. So, give us the goss on Greasus, the greasiest the greasiest of gossip. Goldtooth is what you get when you have an ogre with an insatiable appetite, a singular vision, and considerable guts to enact it. Before Greasus, it had been over a century since the last Over-Tyrant. No ogre since Donna Gutbag, oh, his name was Donna, like a kebab. Donna Gutbag has got Gutbag. That shouldn't be a tongue twister, but I feel like it is. Has had the strength of character to pull the fractured tribes together under one kingdom. That all changed with Greasus, after stewing his father. Lovely. And we don't know the fate of his siblings. He took over the Goldtooth tribe, and its wealth became his. The Goldtooths have always done well compared to the other tribes. Their territory crossed the Ivory Road, one of the few reliable trade routes through the Mountains of Morn between Grand Cathay and the Old World. Greasus, his father, and all previous tyrants of the tribe, had simply destroyed and plundered any caravans they spotted coming through. A good few caravans slipped through, making it a viable concern for brave merchants and their caravan masters, but still, such action was earning the ire of the Celestial Dragon Empire. Not that the Goldtooth tribe cared, they were getting richer off the plunder. When Greasus came to power, he could have kept doing what his forebears had, but this ogre was far greedier and more cunning. Instead, through his envoys, he set up a meeting between himself and Jiao Min at the Tower of Asher. And the Iron Dragon was speaking on behalf of the Dragon Emperor that day, and Greasus made light that they both had difficult relationships with their fathers. While Zhao's retinue gasped at the audacity of this fat creature before them, the Iron Dragon paused and let out a powerful guffaw, which was quickly joined by Greasus's own belly laugh. That day, an informal agreement was made. Cathay's caravans could move through Goldtooth territory, but a toll must be paid. In one stroke, Greasus had ensured that he would get a cut from nearly every caravan that came along the Ivory Road, far more profitable than the ad hoc raids of previous tyrants, and had placated enemies in the east, allowing him to focus on his ambitions within the Ogre Kingdoms. Very, very cool stuff. So I really like that, because yeah, he's always made use of the Ivory Road, but the idea that they've now sort of built in this whole agreement with Cathay and, particular characters, one of the more sort of cunning characters is more willing to sort of speak and make deals with the mortals of the world rather than being a hoity-toity dragon boy. I think it's really interesting. I think this is really cool. I think this really helps sort of link parts of the world together, as well as just the fact that the Ogre Kingdoms are the sort of in-between for the stuff that is already in the Warhammer trilogy and the stuff we are going to have in the Warhammer trilogy. So it's sort of an important junction between these different worlds. And so the idea of them putting that in there and adding some more lore to connect them in a more sort of thorough and meaningful way, I think is really cool. And that can obviously play into all of his sort of game mechanics and things as well, potentially. So there's a lot of potential here to do some really cool stuff. So, moving on from Greasus Goldtooth here, who looks great, by the way. I think it looks fantastic. Very cool. So why is Greasus so much more successful at doing what all ogres want to do? Eat, fight, and gain wealth. Greed obviously plays a large part. He is greedier than the average ogre, and for a race whose culture is based around glut, that is saying something. I think it's his audacity to attain that wealth is why his rise was so monumental. We already touched upon this above with his initial dealing with Cathay, but perhaps the moment that his role as Overtyrant was fully enshrined was at the Firemouth. The Black Orc warlord, Urk Iron Skull's War, was rampaging through the Mountains of Morn. It had knocked aside the Ogre tribes in its way and had gathered at the summit of the Firemouth. A clever move by the Black Orc warlord to squat on their mountain god and deliberately goad the remaining Ogre tribes. Rather than being upset or outraged, Greasus immediately saw this as an opportunity. He had only recently claimed the title of Overtyrant, dominating most of the tribes local to him, but there was still some other from his grubby reach that remained, shall we say, skeptical. The war was a rallying call, a chance for Greasus to cement his rule. Urk Iron Skull's mistake was assuming that all Ogre acted in their own self-interest. I suppose ogres. I don't think it's like Pokemon. I don't think ogre is the plural for ogres, is it? But perhaps it is. Perhaps it is. Is it a typo, or is this some amazing thing that we have been enlightened by? I don't know. That had been the case for the past century, but now there was Greasus. As the vast ogre horde, the largest gathered in decades, climbed the Firemouth, Urk's army was deployed in a way to lure the ogres into a trap. He fully expected the ogres to race towards the open lines, thinking of only their bellies, and then close the jaws of his trap from the flanks. This, I think, is a really interesting story, just for the fact that this is probably the only time that it's sort of suggested that the orcs are the clever ones in a battle. I don't think there's ever been a position where there's been a story involving orcs where they've been the smart ones. I mean, presumably they're about to get outsmarted, but it's interesting framing. I think it's very interesting framing. So, anyway, that's the way it would have gone. But as the ogres were readying themselves for the charge, the peaks reverberated with an almighty shout, an order as if echoed from the gullet of a sky titan, being the precursor to the giants. The race of giants that we know today. Used to be Sky Titans until the ogres ate most of them and enslaved and inbred the rest. So, fun antics. So it was the Overtyrant demanding a halt. His shout stopped the ogre charge, overcoming the guts of every ogre present. And in that moment, Greasus was enshrined as the Overtyrant. Greasus went on to claim victory at the Firemouth. He reorganised the ogres before Urk could react, and all the beasts of the gathered tribes charged as one and smashed the greenskin lines before the trap could close. There was a great feast afterward, and many ogres developed a taste for orc meat. Now, this I think is really fun. The fact that the plan wasn't, charge in as you normally would. It's, no, we're going to charge in like we normally would, but better. And that was the orc's undoing. It wasn't that he did anything particularly clever, he just made sure that the big stuff was in the front and could, smash through the ranks quickly before they could, before the trap could happen. So it's literally just the usual but better, which I think is really funny, Anyway, maybe it's just me. So, how have we reflected that in-game? Well, Greasus' quest battle certainly pays tribute to the feast at the Firemouth battle. I love the fact that every battle is framed as a feast as well, when in the sort of the naming convention of these battles. It's always a feast. It's always the feast that is named, so it's very fun. He holds some unique and very big names. In addition, expect substantial bonuses to raiding and sacking, and he will never be short of his loyal Iron Guts bodyguards. Anything unique about how we imagined him in-game? Greasus is an interesting archetype. He may not be a transforming dragon lord, but he has plenty going for him. I didn't want him to come off as overly comical. He is a ruthless and powerful force, so expect to see hints of Baron Harkonnen, Barry the Baptist from Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and also De Niro's portrayal of Al Capone in The Untouchables. He's one of my favourite voice performances in the game. The actor has done an excellent job. Now this, I think, is... I think this answer is particularly in response to people sort of chatting about the trailers we've seen so far. Because so far all we've really seen of Greasus and his personality is him belching and farting and eating, and that's it. And lazing about in a wheelbarrow. That's all we've seen. So he comes across as a bit of a comedy item. He doesn't really... there's no cunning about him. that we've seen in the trailers. That doesn't really come across. And I think some people have been concerned about that. So, you know, it's a trailer. How much personality can you really portray about being cunning? I mean, you kind of can, but he also does need to stuff his face. You know, it's very difficult to have a character stuff his face while looking particularly cunning. It's a tough thing to balance, so I think you just have to encapsulate the ogres in a more general sense when showing him off in these sort of flashy initial trailers. So I get it, you know, I get it. It's a difficult thing to pull off, but it is nice to know that they really are making sure that he comes across as this sort of clever, you know, conniving and ruthless and powerful you know, chap. I think that's really good. So I like that's being addressed quite directly here, but we'll have to see how it actually sort of pans out, I think. So, next up, yeah, the voices. We haven't heard many ogres in games before. There were some initial discussions considering going in a different direction, but one of the Total War's design pillars is authenticity. We try and get the material in-game as faithfully as we can, unless there's extremely mitigating factors, see below. But the army book and quotes from White Dwarf battle reports and so on are very clear on how the ogres speak, so that's how we cast them. Fair enough. Next up, let's talk about his cart. His miniature is different. Oh no. Yes, we love the concept of the Noblar swarm carrying him everywhere, but not even Greasus' immense wealth could justify breaking the memory budgets and putting out animators through the insane amount of labour required to rig and animate at least 200 bespoke Noblars. So after chatting with Games Workshop, we gave him his cart pushed by 2 Noblar guards. It looks ace in the game. The attacking anims are genius, and those resources were spent elsewhere. That is a sad thing where, I mean, with any kind of fantasy, anything, it's all about ramping everything up to 11, and sadly you can't always pull that off when there are, you know, computers can only do so much. You know, they're very good, but yeah, there are memory budgets and things, which is a pity. It is a genuine pity to see him on that wheelbarrow instead of what could have been, you know, the most insane thing. I have a feeling that the reason why we didn't get Snotling pump wagons sooner is because of all the moving parts on the pump wagons. Just a feeling that I get. But yeah, 200 people carrying him about. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tough one. So, it's a shame. It's a shame, but I get it. If it means we get a game that functions better, I'm happy for it. Especially because, you know, how often are we zoomed right in to the action? I'd rather stuff just play well. So, you know, I get it. I'm sad, but I get it. Thanks, Andy. That's our heaviest ogre, but what about the most magical? Come back tomorrow for a little about Scrag the Slaughterer as we continue to show off the lore behind our legendary Logers. Fair enough. I appreciate alliteration, even if it's forced. I have certainly pulled off worse lingual lumps. So, guys... Exhibit A. So guys, yeah, I'm excited. I think he sounds really good. I like that he's not going to be a sort of bumbling buffoon sort of character. He is going to be an interesting one by the sounds of it. He's going to be, you know, conniving and clever. It's certainly just the setup for the campaign that he's allowed this trade to happen through the Ivory Road, I think is an important one. I think that's a good thing to sort of help set the scene. And that also ties into the fact that Miao-Yin is Miao-Yin, right? Miao-Yin. How am I going to find it? Miao-Yin. Jiao Min. Sorry. I always get those two confused, and I will for the next several years as I cover Warhammer 3. But anyway, Jiao Min actually has a caravan mechanic, you know, or at least Cathay has a caravan mechanic. So the fact that we actually see those caravans passing through his territory, or we will do, I think is really cool. I think it's really nice. I like that everything just sort of ties together nicely, because it's very difficult when you have a brand new faction like Cathay. You have to tie it into all the old factions in a convincing way, and this just helps sort of cement it as, I don't know, as sort of symbiotic, like the rest of the factions are with each other. So I think that's really cool. And I don't necessarily mean symbiotic in a positive, you know, a positive way. You know, it like having a character in their foil is still a symbiotic thing. You know, each sort of facet enriches the other character, you know, even if they're opposed to each other. So any sort of interactions between characters is symbiotic. in sort of terms of story and gameplay and things. So I like this a lot. So anyway, guys, I'm going to end it here then. So if you enjoyed this, comment, like, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more Warhammer 3 news. See you in the next one, guys. Have a good one.